The future of filmmaking includes a large helping of virtual reality. I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Boryana Ivanova, creative producer of VR and collective storytelling and organizer of the Future of Filmmaking conference. Welcome, Boryana.
Thank you for having me, Tonya.
So give us a brief summary of your professional background, especially as it relates to filmmaking and virtual reality and augmented reality.
Right. So I started out as a documentary filmmaker. I've traveled the world. I've been in places like South Africa, Kosovo, Turkey, Laos, Cambodia. My interest towards documentary filmmaking is motivated by social justice. And I see film as a tool for activism. After creating documentary films for a couple of years, I started experimenting with other genres like animation, and I started integrating graphic novel elements in my films. Out of this curiosity, I fell upon the VR world, and a pretty big element of that was the large representation of women in virtual reality. After a few years in the film industry, it became clear that as a young woman, I was always going to be looked at with a little bit of suspicion if I can actually do the task that I'm entrusted with. Last year, I organized a conference about the future of filmmaking. And my idea was to give a platform for women in film. And it was not always easy to find the right people. And when I started digging in the VR world, it turned out that there's so many outspoken women that have their ideas of why the film industry it's too late for the film industry to be changed after, let's say, 60 years of things running a certain way. And VR struck me as a world where the rule book is still being written. And yeah, that's how I ended up in virtual reality.
And you are a huge advocate for women and certainly in this space, and you're seeing a lot of growth in this space. I want to talk about one of the projects that you've worked on. You're actually actively involved in an animated VR series called Futureville. Tell us how you've actually made science fiction into reality.
Right. Well, there's been a lot of talk about science fiction turning into reality. But the last few years, we are seeing this happening. We see genetically modified babies being produced in China. We see gene editing technology like CRISPR being used more and more. And we see certain regulations in countries like the US and the UK being more lax and more allowing of experiments in this area. So I started asking myself, what will be the implications for my life and the life of my kids? Just put together a few episodes dedicated to, for example, brain-machine interface, designer babies, artificial wombs, and ectogenesis, and decided to combine this vision of the future with virtual reality because it's only fitting to see it executed with a new medium.
You actually made a conscious effort to avoid storytelling by conflict in Futureville. But isn't conflict a necessary ingredient in good storytelling? I mean, human against human, human against nature, human against itself, him or herself?
I'm very happy you're asking me this question. Honestly, I'm a little bit tired of dystopian stories. I'm very Yeah, I'm tired with the scaremongering about what technology will bring to our future. I want Futureville to be a series where we're just toying with ideas, and where we can um, play with different scenarios. And how can I say? Technology will not be per se good or bad for us. It is what we make out of it. And we should have this conversation right now, but in a more almost childish way, instead of passing a judgment.
How do you go about creating the alternative endings in the story? What does the creative process involve, and how do you include empathy?
Mm-hmm. Right. So I'll give as an example the episode on designer babies. The protagonist of the series is called Cleo, and she goes with her best friend who is purchasing a design baby. And they go through a sort of decision-making process, and viewers will be able to pass a judgment on whether she should get a baby or what kind of baby she will have, and see the result and figure out for themselves if they're happy with that kind of ending.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Talk about the Future of Filmmaking conference. I mean, this is a global conference held in a virtual world, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Last year, we had speakers from 4 continents, from Asia, Africa, Europe, and the USA. And I was very happy with the fact that organizing the conference online helped us get on board perspectives that normally will be lost. We know that most global conferences are held in Europe or the USA. Most of the speakers are from the US or from Europe. So we're losing a lot of the alternative voices in this conversation.
In your travels across the globe, what differences in attitudes towards technology do you find from continent to continent or culture to culture?
Techno-skepticism is definitely prevailing in Europe. I can tell you that. There's a lot of activist groups to slow down technological, how can I say that, adoption of certain technologies. I'm residing in Berlin, Germany, most of the time, and there the conversation is how do we slow things down? And when I come to California, this is not even a matter of discussion. It is how do we get to the next big thing in the fastest way possible before the competition? There's a very different dialogue. For example, in Africa, the dialogue is mostly about how do we use technology to solve social and economic problems. And I find this a very refreshing perspective because, to my understanding, the role of technology is to solve social problems or help us solve the problems, because technology will not do it instead of us.
So true. Boryana Ivanova, creative producer of VR and collective storytelling. If somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
They can talk to me on LinkedIn. Do I spell it out, or you will include it?
Well, we will absolutely include a B-roll of that of your LinkedIn. It is a long name, but you know what? And certainly we appreciate your time, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to my website, tonyahall.net. I've got links to all my social sites. Thanks for watching.